Chapter 12. Danforth and I have recollections of emerging into a great sculptured hemisphere and of threading our way back trail through the cyclopean rooms and horrors of the dead city. Yet these are purely dream fragments involving no memory of volition, details, or physical exertion. It was as if we floated in a nebulous world or dimension without time, causation, or orientation. The half-gray daylight of the vast circular space sobered us somewhat, for we did not go near those cached sledges or look again at poor Gedney and the dog. They have a strange and titanic mausoleum, and I hope the end of this planet will find them still undisturbed. It was while struggling up the colossal spiral incline that we first felt the terrible fatigue and short breath which our race through the thin plateau air had produced, but not even the fear of collapse could make us pause before reaching the normal outer rim of sun and sky. There was something vaguely appropriate about our departure from those buried epochs, for as we wound our painting way up the 60-foot cylinder of primal masonry, we glimpsed beside us a continuous procession of heroic sculptures on the dead race's early and undecayed technique. A farewell from the old ones, written 50 million years ago. Finally scrambling out at the top, we found ourselves on a great mound of tumbled blocks, with the curved walls of higher stonework rising westward and the brooding peaks of the great mountains showing beyond the more crumbled structures toward the east. The low Antarctic sun of midnight peered ruddy from the southern horizon through rifts in the jagged ruins, and the terrible age and deadness of the nightmare city seemed all the stalker, by contrast with relatively known and accustomed things as the featureless and the features of the polar landscape. The sky above was a churning and opalescent mass of tenuous ice vapors, and the cold clutched at our vitals. Wearily resting the outfit bags to which we had instinctively clung to throughout our desperate flight, we rebuttoned our heavy garments for the stumbling climb down the mound and the walk through the eon-old stone maze to the foothills where our aeroplane waited. Of what we had set us fleeing from the darkness of Earth's secret Arctic gulfs, we said nothing at all. In less than a quarter of an hour we found the steep grade to the foothills, and the probable ancient terrace by which we had descended. Could see the dark bulk of our great plain amidst the sparse ruins on the rising slope ahead. Halfway uphill toward our goal, we paused for a moment, breathing spell, and turned to look again at the fantastic Pelagian tangle of incredible stone shapes below us, once more outlined mystically against an unknown west. As we did so, we saw that the sky beyond had lost its morning haziness, the restless ice vapors having moved up to the zenith, where their mocking outlines seemed on the point of settling into some bizarre pattern which they feared to make quite definite or conclusive. There now lay revealed on the ultimate white horizon behind the grotesque city of a dim, elfin line of pinnacled violet whose needle-pointed heights loomed dreamlike against the beckoning rose color of the western sky. Up toward this shimmering rim sloped the ancient tableland, depressed course of the bygone river traversing it as an irregular ribbon of shadow. For a second, we grasped in admiration of the scene's unearthly cosmic beauty, then vague horror began to creep into our souls. For this far violet line could be nothing else than the terrible mountains of the Forbidden Land, highest of Earth's peak and focus of Earth's evil, harborers of nameless horrors and arcane secrets, shunned and preyed by those who feared to carve their meaning, untrodden by any living thing on earth, but visited by the sinister lightnings and sending strange beams across the plains in the polar night, beyond doubt the unknown archetype of the dreaded Kadath and the old waste beyond the abhorrent Long, whereof unholy primal legends hint evasively. We were the first human beings to ever see them, and I hope to God we may be the last. If the sculptured maps and pictures in that pre-human city had truly told the truth, These cryptic violet mountains could not be much less than 300 miles away, yet none the less sharply did their dim elfin essence just above that remote and snowy rim, like the serrated edge of a monstrous alien planet about to rise into unaccustomed heavens. Their height, then, must have been tremendous, beyond all comparison, carrying them up into a tenuous atmospheric strata peopled by such gaseous wraiths as rash flyers have barely lived to whisper of after and unexplainable falls. Looking at them, I thought nervously of certain unsculptured hints of what the great bygone river had washed down into the city from their accursed slopes, and wondered how much sense and how much folly had lain in the fears of those old ones who carved them so recently. I recalled how their northerly end must have near the coast at Queen Maryland, where even at the moment Sir Douglas Mawson's expedition was doubtless working less than 1,000 miles away, in hope that no evil fate would give Sir Douglas and his men a glimpse of what might lie beyond the protecting coastal range. Such thoughts formed a measure of my overwrought condition at the time, and Danforth seemed to be even worse. Yet long before we had passed the great star-shaped ruin and reached our plain, our fears had become transferred to the lesser but vast enough range whose recrossing lay ahead of us. From these foothills the black, ruin-crusted slopes reared up starkly and hideously against the east, again reminding us of those strange Asian paintings of Nicholas Rourke. And when we thought of those damnable honeycombs beside them, of the frightful amorphous entities that might have pushed their fetidly squirming way even to the topmost hollow pinnacles, we could not face without panic the prospect of again sailing by those suggested skywards cave mouths, where the wind made sound like an evil musical piping over a wide range. To make matters even worse, we saw distinct traces of local mist around the several summits, as poor Lake must have done when he made that early mistake about volcanism, and thought shiveringly of that kindred mist from which we had just crept, of that, and of the blasphemous horror-fostering abyss whence all such vapors came. All was well with the plane, and we clumsily hauled on our heavy flying furs. Danforth got the engine started without trouble, and we made a very smooth takeoff over the nightmare city. Below us, the primal cyclopean masonry spread out as it had done when we first saw it, so short, yet infinitely long, a time ago, and we began rising and turning to test the wind for our crossing through the pass. At a very high level, there must have been a great disturbance, since the ice-dust clouds of the zenith were doing all sorts of fantastic things, but at 24,000 feet, the height we needed for the pass, we found navigation quite practicable. As we drew close to the jutting peaks, the wind's strange piping again began to manifest. I could see Danforth's hands trembling at the controls. Rank amateur though I was, I thought at the moment that I might be a better navigator than he in effecting the dangerous crossing between pinnacles, and when I made motions to change seats and take over his duties, he did not protest. I tried to keep all my skill and self-possession about me, stared at the sector of reddish farther sky betwixt the walls of the pass, resolutely refusing to pay attention to the puffs of mountaintop vapor, and wishing that I had wax-stopped ears like Ulysses' men off the Siren's coast to keep that disturbing wind piping from my consciousness. But Danforth, released from his piloting and keyed up a dangerous nervous pitch, could not keep quiet. I felt him turning and wriggling about as he looked back at the terrible receding city, ahead at the cave-riddled and cube-barnacled peaks, sideways at the black sea of snowy, rampart-strewn foothills, and upward at the seething, grotesquely clouded sky. It was then, just as I was trying to steer safely through the pass, that his mad shrieking brought us so close to disaster by shattering my tight hold on myself and causing me to fumble helplessly with the controls for a moment. A second afterward, my resolution triumphed, and we made the crossing safely, yet I am afraid that Danforth will never be the same again. I have said that Danforth refused to tell me what final horror made him scream out so insanely, a horror which, I feel sadly sure, is mainly responsible for his present breakdown. We had snatches of shouted conversation above the wind's piping and the engines buzzing as we reached the safe side of the range and swooped slowly down toward the camp, but that had mostly to do with the pledges of secrecy we had made as we prepared to leave Nightmare City. Certain things we had agreed were not for people to know and discuss lightly. I would not speak of them now but for the need of heading off that Starkweather Moor expedition and others at any cost. It is absolutely necessary for the peace and safety of mankind that some of Earth's dark, dead corners and unplumbed depths be let alone, that sleeping abnormalities waked to resurgent life, and blasphemously surviving nightmares squirm and splash out of their black layers to new and wilder conquests. All that Danforth has ever hinted is that the final horror was a mirage. It was not, as he declares, anything connected with the cubes and the caves of echoing, vaporous, wormly honeycombed mountains of madness which we crossed, but a single fantastic demonic glimpse among the churning zenith clouds of what lay back of those other violet westward mountains which the old ones had shunned and feared. It is very possible that the thing was a sheer delusion born of previous stresses we had passed through, and of the actual thought unrecognized mirage of the dead Trans-Mountain City experienced near Lake's Camp the day before. But it was so real to Danforth that he suffers from it still. He has, on rare occasions, whispered disjointed and irresponsible things about the Black Pit, the carven rim, the proto-shoggoths, the windowless solids with 5 dimensions, the nameless cylinder, the Elder Pharos, Yog-Sothoth, the primal white jelly, the color out of space, the wings, the eyes in darkness, the moon ladder, the original, the eternal, the undying, and other bizarre concepts. But when he is fully himself, he repudiates all this and attributes it to his curious and macabre reading of earlier years. Danforth indeed is known to be among the few who have ever dared go completely through the worm-riddled copy of the Necronomicon kept under lock and key in the college library. The higher sky as we crossed the range was surely vaporous, disturbed enough, and although I did not see the zenith, I can well imagine that its swirls of ice dust may have taken strange forms. Imagination, knowing how vividly distant scenes can sometimes be reflected, refracted, and magnified by such layers of restless clouds, might easily have supplied the rest. Of course, Danforth did not hint any of those specific horrors till after his memory had had a chance to draw on his bygone reading. He could never have seen so much in one instantaneous glance. At the time, his shrieks were confined to the repetition of a single mad word of all too obvious source. Tekeli, Tekeli. Thank you. That was Chapter 12 of At the Mountains of Madness. Thank you for listening to my reading. I will see you very soon.